Hi, my name is Antonis and I'm the painter of this video. Today I'm painting the portrait of a little child and I'm using Egg Tempera as my medium. This video will be helpful for those of you who paint with acrylics as well. Acrylics is a water-based medium very similar to Egg Tempera and the way Egg Tempera is behaving, and I'm pretty sure you will find many useful advice here on this video. So as you see, I've already drawn my subject on a piece of paper using the grid method, and then I've transferred my subject, my drawing, on this rabbit skin glue primed panel. And I use rabbit skin glue because I'm painting with Egg Tempera. If I was to paint this portrait with acrylics, I could prepare the panel with a gesso that has as a base an acrylic glue. Anyway, as you see here, I've transferred already my drawing, and those of you who are familiar with my channel know this process of underpainting. I'm doing a very loose, not much detailed underpainting in a watercolor, say, way, with thinner or thicker black color here thinned with the egg solution. And I just try to explore here the areas and the shapes of lights and shadows on the face of my subject. So I'm doing this very loosely here, and it doesn't need to be much detailed, although the more detailed it is, the more familiar I will be with my subject, and it will be easier for me later on to paint. Everything, as you will see, will be covered later on. For this portrait, I got my inspiration from the Fayum portraits, portraits painted with tempera centuries ago, as well as a painting from Domenico Ghirlandaio, painting the portrait of an old man with his grandson. I could see on that portrait the fine brush strokes that are very characteristic for tempera painting, and they are very, very charming. The same brush strokes that we can see on the Fayum portraits so many centuries ago, and they truly can be very, very different than oil painting, but also very extremely charming. Now at this point you see that I have created a color that the Italians call it Verdaccio, the Byzantine iconographers call it proplasmos, and I paint this with yellow ochre, some black, a little bit of iron oxide red, some cadmium yellow. It's the one on the previous clip of my palette. And this brown greenish, let's say, color, I will cover the whole flesh area and the hair area. Whereupon, as you see now, I'm preparing on my palette some darker colors with which I will paint the facial features, the areas of shadow, as you see here at this point. So maybe this video is for more advanced painters, but I do invite, no matter if you are advanced or beginners in painting with water-soluble mediums like tempera or acrylics, to be bold and try something as difficult, although as you will see there is a process that will simplify things for you, and it's gonna be not that hard. So as you see, the Verdaccio layer I've painted is a very transparent, let's say, or half transparent layer. It does allow the facial features to be seen from the previous step where I painted my facial features with just black. And now I'm proceeding with painting these shadows, these and the facial, the eyes, the mouth, etc., with this darker than the Verdaccio color in value. And as you'll see, I'm using just the tip of my brush. My brush here needs to be a good Kolinsky brush, and with the tip of my brush, I'm using this stitching brush strokes that are that are very characteristic and so beautiful when painting with egg tempera. Now here I will pay a lot of attention at this step. I will try to understand which areas are darker than my Verdaccio layer. I will observe a lot my subject, and I will define in my mind, I will try to find the Verdaccio, let's say, tone that I can see on my photograph or on my subject. And after I found this on my photograph and paint my Verdaccio on my board, I will paint these darker shapes of shadow and the facial features. And then, as you see here, I will do some basic blending of the darker shadows with my Verdaccio. I'm not at this point, I'm not extremely detailed, or I'm not very much worried. And see how nicely, how beautifully the brush is behaving, the tip of the brush. It's really satisfying also. I just allow the color to flow from the tip of the brush, and I don't smear the color here. This is something very different than oil painting. In oil painting, we apply the color, and then we are to move the color around, stretch the color here and there. Here I just apply the color and let it be. That's why I want my brush strokes to be more elegant, let's say, more fine, and I'm using for this reason the tip of my brush. Of course, there are many ways to approach this kind of painting, but as I was inspired by Ghirlandaio's painting and so many other masters who used egg tempera, the Fayum masters as well, I wanted these brush strokes to be seen, to be observable, let's say, and I didn't want to create a portrait that would be oil painted like the work of, say, Da Vinci, where sfumato doesn't allow for any brushstroke to be seen. I know it's too much talking, but I hope this will help. Here you see that my palette is limited. I don't use many colors, like 7 or 8 colors maximum. As you see, I'm preparing a flesh, a color that is for the lights on the face, the first light as we call it. And for this I'm using some titanium white, a little bit of cadmium yellow. I can add some yellow ochre, a little bit of cadmium red, and I want to create a color here that is pinkish, but it does contain some yellow as well. And see here how I have various paddles of color on my palette that can be thinner or thicker. Here I will paint this first light layer with a half thick, not very thick and not very thin color, a color that has substantial body into it. But as you see, I've created on my palette, I have another paddle of color that is a little bit more thin, and I will use it for some basic blending, as you will see in a little bit. Here I'm using a brush that is not very thin. It's a fine Kolinsky brush that can hold the color very well, that has a very fine tip, and I want here I'm searching for the shapes of light. I'm observing my photograph, and I'm trying to establish these first shapes of light without a lot of well, I am in an alarm mode here. I'm really observing hardly, but I can imagine what will follow in terms of the blending. And so little by little I will paint these areas of light, and I'm using this the tip of my brush always, especially on the areas where the light meets the shadow. Here on the cheek, for example, you will see that I will not go all over towards the shadow, or as I approach the border of the shadow, I will use a more thin color. You can see this on my brush strokes. I don't mind showing these linear brush strokes that the tip of the brush creates. It's something, as I said, that I want to be seen here. But I make sure that I don't go all the way towards the shadow, because I'm observing my reference and I see that there I will have to stop because shadow begins. This color, as I say, is so I go back and forth with more thick and more thin colors of the same hue. Now I want to create this blending color, a color that is in between my first light and the second and my proplasmos, my Verdaccio. So as you see here, I'm using some of my Verdaccio and some of my first light, and I will also add a little bit of cadmium yellow just to make things more lively, just to make things more alive. Also, I will use a further, an even darker flesh tone that is much thinner, as you see, and with these in between colors that I will do this blending. Here you will see the first layer of blending has already been done in this clip of the video, but it's going to be evident here the way I'm doing this blending, again by using as I said, an in-between color, and by using the tip of my brush I will do these blendings. At this part of the clip this is already painted, and now I'm using a tone that is very close to the painting, to the tone of the first light. It's not actually first light, but it's very close to it, just to re-establish the shape of the light and to paint and to correct some areas that need a more fine blending. The point here is to go back and forth in these tones, in these in-between tones, between Verdaccio and the first light, and little by little, and by using different tones and at the same time thinner or thicker tones, to create this blending that can be very elegant and very smooth. Little by little it can be very smooth. This depends on how much you want these brush strokes to be seen. We have painters of Egg Tempera that they prefer a very thin blending, a very smooth, fine blending, and this is a matter of aesthetics, of course. And we have also tempera painters and acrylic painters who don't care much about very smooth blending, and we can see their brush strokes being very coarse. Here I'm interested in painting this portrait. It's a child, and the face of a child is very smooth. And I want my final portrait to not be very coarse, but rather have some smoothness on it. Definitely, I want this stitching like brushstrokes to be evident, but not so much as to be intrusive and change, let's say, the expression of the texture of the skin of this boy. So probably this stage is the most difficult when we paint with Egg Tempera or in any other medium, when we try to establish this contrast between lights and shadow, and this is a matter of a lot of practice and a lot of experience. It's really fine if you struggle with this on your first efforts. It's really okay, and it's expected. So little by little you will feel more comfortable. You will understand how your brush behaves, how the color behaves, and little by little you will create anything you like, since you will understand the medium better. If you want to learn more about traditional painting and how to paint like the masters, join me at my Patreon page, where you can find exclusive content that I upload on oil painting, egg tempera painting, iconography, some lessons on drawing from life, and so much more. Page where you can support the production of my videos, and you can learn so many things about painting. Thank you so much. I will see you at the studio. I spend a lot of time on this stage. I go back and forth on my palette. I will play with thin and thick colors, but at all times, and this is something you have to be to know, at all times I feel how I check how my brush feels. I check if it does obey my commands, let's say. And I want, if it doesn't behave well, I will change with some other brush that does the job that I need to be that I needed to be done. Now, Kolinsky brushes can be a little bit more expensive than synthetic ones, but they really are so satisfying to work, especially if you work with water-based mediums like this, and we use relatively thin layers, because if you work with acrylics, maybe sometimes we use thicker colors, and the Kolinsky brushes don't behave well with thick colors. But if you use thin colors like in Egg Tempera, they are truly amazing and very satisfying to paint with. Now on my palette I will create these warm tones with which I will paint the mouth, and before that I will add some reddish pinkish color on the cheeks of my portrait. You will see how thin the color is here. It's almost transparent, and of course the underneath layers have to be dry before that. On tempera it dries very quickly, and when I'm painting such thin layers, I definitely have to be very soft with the handling of my brush strokes, very control my movements, my wrist movements a lot, and to make sure that I don't overdo it. This is a glaze, of a warm glaze, and I can, of course, I can use also different glazes. Here is a cadmium red and cadmium yellow mixed together, very transparent glaze, but if I want, I can add also some color of the flesh, the first light in that mixture, and soften a little bit this glaze. And as you see here, I will go over the shadows. This color is so transparent that it will not cover anything that I've painted underneath, but it will enrich the color that is already underneath it. When painting in this style, feel free to go back and forth. I mean, you can definitely, if you feel that something hasn't been blended very well, you can create a color that is in between light and shadow and revisit that area. What I'm doing now and add these flesh rosy tones on the portrait, I can revisit this process later on after the portrait is more complete, and I can add even more warmer glazes or colder glazes in some areas according to what needs to be done. This is the beauty of painting with tempera, painting in layers, and the more experienced I get with painting, the more I find that this way of painting suits me a lot and does make me enjoy painting a lot. Some painters really don't like the way tempera dries quickly, and this is very, very understandable. I will observe how the nose is, the lights and the shadows on the nose. That's always a tricky area around the nostrils. It's something that you have to observe and see your highlights, your shadows, how warm the light becomes around the nostrils, etc. Also, underneath the mouth, check how shadowy it can get on the lower part of the lips. And I have to say that it was very, very satisfying to paint this portrait with this with the tip of my brush. It was very, very satisfying. I felt I don't know, some liberation for some reason. I felt that I was in control while painting, that I knew what I was doing, and this is always very, very nice. Now, if you want to check and see how I've painted the hair of this portrait, you will see the finished portrait at the end, but you will find a tutorial on painting the hair on my Patreon page, along with much other exclusive content there. And I want to thank you so much, all my Patreon supporters there, because your support is very, very important for me. It allows me to spend more time producing these videos and painting these videos, these tutorials for you. And I really want to thank you there with some exclusive content that can be more thorough and about subjects that are more easy to be shown and be taught on Patreon. I also want to thank everybody here on YouTube for your amazing support, my subscribers here, and your beautiful comments. You always are very, very supportive as well. So thank you all so much for your help and your nice, positive vibes. Thank you. I hope that these videos are helpful and you get something out of those. If anything, I hope you get some inspiration at least to be in the studio and to experiment with these methods that can be very, very rewarding, especially in hard times and challenging times. This connection with the techniques of the past is very rewarding, I would say. So here, painting the lips, I'm using the same colors that I used for my glazing before, but here I'm using them a little bit more thick. And this is just a matter of observation here. I observe the shape of the lower lip. I observe how abruptly the warmer colors of the lips blend with the skin area. Sometimes I see painters that are painting the mouths in a very abrupt way, as if there's completely no transition between the lips and the skin. There's always some transition. The same way there's a transition between the iris in the eye and the white part of the eye. There's a smooth, very soft, discrete blending between the iris and the white part, as you will see later on. So it's a matter of observation of the shapes on the mouth, along with the shapes of the shadows and the lights. Now, of course, it's very important that you will have a very strong drawing of your subject, and it's always nicer to draw the subject yourselves instead of using a print to project the subject on your board. For this, the grid method is very accurate, and it can be a little bit mechanical, but it will help our eye adjust and will learn us how great drawing looks like. So now that I've painted my first light, I've done my blending to the Verdaccio, I've painted some warmer glazes that can be more red or a little bit orangey, and I've also painted the mouth. Now I'm ready to proceed with further lighting the face, add more light on the face, and as you see here on the palette, as you saw, I've created some lighter colors than the first light by adding titanium white, and you saw that I also created some thinner versions of this second light, with which I will do my blending. Here you see me adding this second light, and see how limited the area of this second light is, how little area I cover with this second light, and of course I'm using again the tip of the brush to create this very characteristic brush strokes of the tempera. I observe my photograph, and I see that the skin is not very light, it is pinkish, it's bright, but it doesn't get too white. So I want to keep this on my painting too. I see that the forehead almost doesn't get a lot of white, and now you see that I'm already doing this blending by painting with a color that consists of this second light. It consists of more egg tempera solution, so it is thinner, and also a little bit of my previous first light. And again here, by using this linear way of blending, I do my blending, as you see, and directly the portrait becomes very beautiful. It does become more three-dimensional, more naturalistic. When I create this second light on my palette, I make sure that it's not as, of course it's going to be more light in value than the first light, but also I want this second light to be a little bit more pinkish. The percentage of red, cadmium red, can be more than on the previous light, on the first light, where it was a little bit more yellowy. Here, for the second light, I want it to be a little bit more reddish. And see that by using and playing around the bit in between the first light and the second light on my palette, and by the use of more thin and runny colors and more thick, I will do this very fine blending. Remember that colors have to feel organic. The shapes of light and the way we light our portrait have to feel have to feel correct, not plastic. This is very hard to explain, but sometimes I have seen students that add their second lights, and they make higher tones on their face. They add this, but these, I don't know, it's the brush strokes, the blending, they don't seem very natural. They don't seem that they blend, they are, let's say, integrated with the underneath layers, and it does feel uncomfortable and not correct. See here on my palette how thin the colors that I use can be, and trust me, they can be even thinner than what you saw here. So it's important when you're painting with Egg Tempera to be able and to trust that you can thin down your colors a lot. Now, if you paint with acrylics, remember that of course you can thin down your colors a lot, but if you thin them down, you have to add some medium in your on your palette, because if you just use water to thin the colors down, the color will become weak. And sometimes with the time the glue will disappear, let's say. So we need to add, the more we thin down our colors on acrylics, the more medium, the more glue, let's say, the binding factor of color we need to add in order to keep the colors strong. So I just want you here to observe how runny these colors are, how transparent they are, and of course the delicate use of the brush. And it already gives this method already gives me some nice rosy flesh painting here. I know my English is horrible. Thank you also for staying until now and listening to this painter with the thick accent. Thank you so much. It's the best I can. So anyway, again, I'm adding layers, very thin layers, glazes, let's say, of fleshy colors here, until I feel that all the layers are beautiful, are nice to be seen. They will seem organic. And I don't know. I don't know how I can teach this or transfer this to you. This is something that you feel. Finally, I will do some highlights if necessary. To me, it was amazing how this ancient technique of highlighting with tempera or encaustic that we find in the Fayum portraits of the first century, let's say, or the Hellenistic period in Egypt, how this technique is very, very similar to the portraits we see on the Greek area of the later centuries, the early Renaissance, and how it can serve the portraiture today, and how it can give us beautiful contemporary portraits that are very, very nice to see. I'm a little bit bored with the photorealistic portraits that I see everywhere. Huge, large portraits where you can see every pore of the skin. They can be impressive. I understand this, but definitely painting is not that, or not just that. So I don't know if you agree with this, but I really like this idea of tempera painting and building the volume in this stitching brush strokes. It's really, really nice. If you are not familiar with the Fayum portraits, search them online. They are very beautiful. They are mummy portraits of the Hellenistic period, based on the Greek tradition of painting, and they are their gaze is unique. Each one is really unique. Some of them are painted with the encaustic technique, with wet, warm wax and dry pigments, and some of them are just painted with tempera. And they are great paintings. And one of the earliest examples of the ancient painting that has survived until today. So now at this point I'm adding my final touches on the flesh. I want to be very careful at this point to not exceed with these highlights, to not cover any of the underneath layers that I've painted before. And I wish you could see the actual painting by close instead of just the video. It's a little bit more soft. The actual painting is a little softer than here on the video, and I wish you could see that. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Now I'm about to paint the eye of the child here. And for this I'm using some gray blue colors on my palette. I will try to be accurate to observe the shape of the white triangle here inside the eye, and the tilt of the iris, find the correct tilt. And also how I want to be careful here and paint also the shadows inside the white part to make a nice blend of how the eyebrow gives a tiny shadow on the white part of the eye. This is something that preoccupies me here, and also I want to see how much of the eyebrows are seen. And I don't want this white part of the eyes to be very blue. It has to be more cold than the skin. It has some bluish tint to it, but not something that can be very blue. So I can soften a little bit this bluish gray by adding some of the flesh color, just to break the bluishness of it. And then I will prepare to add the highlights in the eye. And as you see directly, it gets alive. This portrait, it becomes something different, something so much more naturalistic, more alive. See how carefully here I handle the brush, and of course playing with thinner and thicker colors here. And our paintings don't need to be perfect. They just need to, give us some pleasure, give us some inspiration, some time in the studio. I wish, if one thing, I would just wish that these videos do inspire you to be in the studio, to create something and paint something in good mood. We really don't need to paint perfectly. We just need to paint, and beautiful things will come for sure. The more we give to painting, the more painting will give us back things. And I really hope you enjoy your time in the studio, and you have a great time, and you progress and proceed, and you learn things, and you have a great time. Times can be hard. Time can be hard on ourselves. So again, thank you so much for being here. Stay healthy, stay creative, and I will see you soon with another video. Check the hair on Patreon if you like, and I will see you soon. Bye.